Hello students, in this lecture we will discuss about the mechanism, or it can be called physiology of digestion. I hope you know the differences between anatomy and physiology. In the previous lectures we completed anatomy of the digestive system, where we discuss in detail the structure of the digestive system, right? Today in this session we will discuss about what? Physiology, nothing but how our digestive system help in the process of digestion as well as absorption. Before going to the mechanism of digestion, how the food will be digested, let us just brush up the steps involved in our nutrition. The major steps involved in our nutrition are, one is, I will write here, one is the first, it all begin with ingestion. What is ingestion? Taking the or placing the food into oral cavity. Once the food is placed in the oral cavity, it passes through your alimentary canal, right? From mouth it goes to esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine. Especially in your oral cavity, in stomach as well as in the small intestine, the food undergo digestion. Now once digestion process is over, now the question is how digestion occur, what mechanism is involved. Especially in our oral cavity, as we have teeth, with the help of teeth mechanical digestion of the food takes place, right? We are chewing the food, so what happens? By the chewing activity, mechanical digestion of the food occur. That means the larger food is broken down to smaller particle. When that food mixes with saliva, the enzymes present in the saliva help in chemical digestion. Later that food goes to your stomach. In the stomach also there is chemical digestion by different enzyme. When that food then goes to small intestine, which is the principal site for both digestion and absorption, there also in the presence of various enzymes, the food undergo chemical digestion. That means the digestion in our alimentary canal occur by two methods. One is mechanical digestion with the help of teeth. Second one is chemical digestion with the help of what? Different enzymes. Hope you remember the different enzymes present in different gastric juices. Before listening to this lecture, I request you first go through the different enzymes of saliva, gastric juice, bile juice, pancreatic juice, intestinal juice. If you are thorough with that, the mechanism of digestion becomes very easy for you. Clear? Anyhow, remember that both mechanical and chemical digestion of the food occurs in our alimentary canal or the GI tract. Once digestion is over, the end products of digestion are formed. Once the food is broken down, other end product galu formation ಆಗ್ತವೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? Say for example, if carbohydrate present in the food is broken down, its end products are formed. Those end products like glucose are formed. Those end products then undergo which step? They undergo absorption. Okay, they undergo absorption. I told you already the definition of absorption. It is the movement of end products of digestion from alimentary canal to blood or lymph is called absorption. We will discuss this in detail in the coming videos. Okay, after that the some part of the food which is not digested, we cannot keep it inside, that should be eliminated through the last opening of the digestive system. And what is that step called? Defecation. But before that, one more step is there, that is nothing but assimilation. What is assimilation? Utilization of the end product of digestion by the cells. So in the next few lectures we are discussing, again we are starting from where? The digestion, absorption, assimilation, and we will discuss about the process of defecation. So today in this video we will start with which one? Mechanism of digestion. We will not much focus on mechanical digestion, we will focus more on the chemical digestion. Okay, now before starting that, one more very important thing that we should know is, if you take our food, right, we can call it as a nutrient. The food which we take inside, it has different nutrients, or even I can say our food has various biomolecules. Dear students, what do you mean by biomolecule? Any organic and inorganic molecule present in the living system. I repeat, organic and inorganic molecules present in the living system. Now the question is, what are the very important biomolecules or nutrients present in our food? You have to remember that, which mainly include, number one, what is there? Carbohydrate is present. What else is there in our diet? Protein is present. We are eating lipids. Lipids commonly called what? Fat. Fatty acid is different. Fat is different. Okay. Many fatty acids, they form fat, or the fat is called what? Lipids. I will explain you about it also. And one more very important component is nucleic acid. So we are discussing the carbohydrate, protein, lipid and nucleic acid which is present in my food. When it passes through my alimentary canal, how it is digested chemically. Remember how these biomolecules are digested in our alimentary canal. How? Chemically. Chemically means with the help of what? Enzymes. That is what we are studying under this heading. Now let us begin one by one. But before going to that, one more very important thing is, where and all digestion of the food occurs. Whenever you explain these digestion of biomolecules, you have to think, what are the areas in my alimentary canal where the food digestion takes place? Yellelli food particles digest ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇವೆ. Do it occur in the esophagus? Your answer is no. Right? Do it occur in the pharynx? No. So remember, when you explain the digestion, the food digestion occur in only three regions. What are they? One is oral cavity, also called buccal cavity. One more is stomach. Number three, intestine or the small intestine. So we are mainly focusing on oral cavity, where there is a juice called saliva. Then the food goes to stomach, the second site of digestion. There is no digestion of food in my esophagus. Keep in mind. In stomach, with the help of which juice? Gastric juice, right? Then the another site for digestion of food is small intestine. Can you tell me how many different digestive juices are present in the small intestine? Three. What are they? One is the bile juice. You know, bile juice is produced by liver but released to my small intestine. Its action is seen in the small intestine. One is bile juice. Number two, pancreatic juice produced by pancreas but released to my small intestine. Another one is intestinal juice. So what are the three digestive juices acting in our small intestine? I repeat, number one, bile juice kuda ide, pancreatic juice in action kuda matadbeku navu, innondu yaudu? Intestinal juice. Clear? We will start one by one. Now, my food, the diet, what is there? It has all these biomolecules, but what I will do, we will start one by one. We will first begin with the digestion of, digestion of which one? Carbohydrate. Where the digestion of carbohydrate occurs. Now, you know that the food, as we take it, we will do ingestion of the food. That food first comes in contact with which cavity? Oral cavity. In oral cavity, do digestion of carbohydrate occurs? Yes, because in oral cavity there is a fluid called what? Saliva. Just turn your page and just go through the notes related to saliva. The composition of saliva I told you. In saliva there is one carbohydrate digesting enzyme. Observe madidira? Yaudadu? That is called salivary amylase. Idiya ilva? Yes, there is salivary amylase. Now, one of the very important carbohydrate present in our food is what? Starch, or what may also present glycogen. Especially if you feed on vegetables or right plant source, you will get starch. If you feed on animal source, fish, meat, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತದ್ದು ಯಾವುದು? ಗ್ಲೈಕೋಜನ್, ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡಿಂಗ್ ದ ಮಶ್ರೂಮ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಅಲ್ವಾ, ರೈಟ್? ಎನಿಹೌ, ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಚ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಗ್ಲೈಕೋಜನ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಕಾರ್ಬೋಹೈಡ್ರೇಟ್. ಇಫ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಈಟಿಂಗ್ rice as what? Starch. If you are eating chicken or fish, the main carbohydrate present is glycogen placed in your oral cavity. Try to understand the concept. In oral cavity, in the presence of an enzyme called, what is that? Salivary amylase. The enzyme salivary amylase at a pH of, I told you the pH. What is the pH? The best pH. We can say optimum pH. Dear students, what do you mean by optimum? The best pH for the activity of an enzyme. What is that enzyme? Salivary amylase. When I am chewing that food, along with mechanical digestion, saliva mixes with the food. Salivary amylase present in the saliva act on both starch and glycogen, which are broken down to smaller pieces called disaccharides. What? Disaccharide. And one of the very important disaccharide formed during this process is what? Maltose. What do you mean by mono? Mono means one, di means two, tri means three. Monosaccharide means single sugar. Disaccharide means two sugar. Trisaccharide means three sugar. Polysaccharide means many sugar. Say for example, very simple, if I write here, if I show a molecule of glucose, how many glucose I have shown? Only one. That's why the single glucose, I call it as a monosaccharide. Saccharon means sugar. Monosaccharide means single sugar. Now, say for example, this is one glucose. Try to understand. In detail, we will discuss this in the chapter biomolecule. Okay. But now understand this. Now, how many glucose are there? Two. These two glucose are joined by a bond. As two glucose are united here, I will call that as what? Disaccharide. What is their concept is very simple. This is one glucose attached to one more glucose, attached to one more glucose. Dear students, what this compound called? Trisaccharide. Okay, one glucose, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, large number. What you want to call such sugar as? Polysaccharide. If only one glucose or a single unit is present, it is called monosaccharide. Two are joined. Two such monosaccharides are joined. I repeat, two such monosaccharides are joined. Glucose is a monosaccharide. How many glucose are there? Two. Now the compound is called disaccharide. When three monosaccharides are joined, it becomes trisaccharide. When many such monosaccharides are joined, it becomes polysaccharide. Remember, both starch and glycogen are what? They are polysaccharide. When the enzyme salivary amylase, try to understand, this is the, just assume this is the structure of what? Polysaccharide. Okay, polysaccharide. One of the example for polysaccharide is starch and glycogen. Starch present in your rice. Now, the enzyme salivary amylase act on the starch, which is a polysaccharide, breaks down the bond. When the bond is broken down, what happens? I'm sorry. Okay, when the bond is broken down, what happens? A piece of it is formed. This piece has how many monosaccharides or how many sugar? 2. That's why it is called disaccharide. So whenever starch and glycogen are broken down, so it results in the formation of what? Large number of pieces of it called disaccharide. Many disaccharides are there. One such disaccharide is maltose. If you consume milk, the milk has a disaccharide called lactose. If you eat sugarcane, jaggery, ಬೆಲ್ಲ, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು ಸುಕ್ರೋಸ್ ಅನ್ನುವ ಒಂದು ಡೈಸ್ಯಾಕರೈಡ್. Anyhow, I hope it is this much clear. Salivary amylase breaks it down into large pieces called disaccharide. One such disaccharide formed is what? Maltose. Next very important point, out of the total carbohydrate that is placed in the oral cavity, remember this point, only 30% of the carbohydrate digestion occur in my oral cavity. ಏನು ಫುಡ್ ಅನ್ನ ಮೌತ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಿ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇವಲ ಓನ್ಲಿ 30% of the carbohydrate digested in our oral cavity. Why not more than that? Not exactly on an average. Why not more than that? The answer is food remains in the oral cavity for a shorter duration. As food remains in the oral cavity for a shorter duration, we can expect 30% carbohydrate digestion in the oral cavity. Now, the remaining how much percent? 70% of the carbohydrate or starch, glycogen, which was not broken down, and the already formed maltose. I repeat, the 70% carbohydrate and the remaining maltose, all from the oral cavity. Illinda avaru next ellige hogtare? They goes to stomach. Next we have to discuss about the digestion in stomach. Now, just turn the page and please tell me, is there any, which juice is there in the stomach? Gastric juice. Acidic or alkaline? Acidic. Check the page, check the notes and tell me, is there any carbohydrate digesting enzyme in our gastric juice? Check ಮಾಡಿ ಒಮ್ಮೆ, ಇದೆಯಾ? No. I have told you that in gastric juice there is a protein digesting enzyme, there is a lipid digesting enzyme, but there is no carbohydrate digesting enzyme. The remaining 70% carbohydrate and the already formed maltose from oral cavity, they have reached your stomach. My question is there any digestion of carbohydrate in your stomach? Stomach alli idara digestion aagta unta? Your answer is no. Why? Even though carbohydrate stomach ge hodru kuda digestion agodilla. Yake? Why? Because there are no, don't say no enzyme, you have to say no carbohydrate digesting enzyme. No carbohydrate digesting enzyme in which juice? Gastric juice. Hence, there is no action of carbohydrate in the stomach. Okay, so ಹಾಗಾಗಿ the 70% carbohydrate ಮತ್ತು maltose ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸ್ಟಮಕ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದೇ ಬದಲಾವಣೆ ಆಗದೆ, ಹೈಯರ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ there is some change, ಬಟ್ ಈ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಷ್ಟು ಡೀಟೇಲ್ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಬೇಕಂತ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. Now the remaining 70% of carbohydrate which came to stomach without any change. Why? There is no carbohydrate digesting enzyme in the gastric juice. It comes to where next? Small intestine. Okay, what happens in the small intestine? That is what we are going to discuss. Now turn the page and tell me, what are the different juices present in your small intestine? The 3 juices are, number 1, bile juice. Already we know that bile juice is the only digestive juice which is without any enzyme. ಯಾವುದೇ enzyme ಇಲ್ಲ. Point number 2, bile juice has bile salt that help in emulsification of fat. Alva, emulsification of fat means breaking down of larger fat into smaller fat. ಇನ್ನೊಮ್ಮೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ ಈ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರಿ ಥ್ರೂ ಔಟ್. ಬೈಲ್ ಜ್ಯೂಸ್ is the only digestive juice compared to saliva, gastric juice, pancreatic juice, intestinal juice. It is the only digestive juice which is without any enzyme. Point number 2, it has bile salt that helps only in emulsification of fat. That means breaking down of larger fat into smaller fat. So no confusion at all. The one and only one job of bile juice is ಏನು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಎಮಲ್ಸಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್. ಲಿಪಿಡ್ ಡೈಜೆಷನ್ ಮಾತಾಡುವಾಗ ಮಾತ್ರ ನೀವು ಬೈಲ್ ಜ್ಯೂಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಸಾಕು. ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್? ಸೊ here I am not going to speak anything about it because no role played by bile juice in carbohydrate digestion. Now what happens in your small intestine? The remaining 70% of carbohydrates, okay, and the maltose come in contact with which juice? Come in contact with the pancreatic juice. Okay, tell me, is there any carbohydrate digesting enzyme in the pancreatic juice? Your answer is yes. What is that? Pancreatic amylase. What is that? Pancreatic amylase. Now what happens? The remaining starch and glycogen, dear students, how much percent? The remaining 70%. In your small intestine, in the presence of pancreatic juice having an enzyme called which enzyme? Pancreatic amylase. Okay, pancreatic amylase. It is converted to again what? It also breaks down the remaining starch into what? Disaccharides. Like, what is the disaccharide? Once again, same, maltose. Okay, so finally all carbohydrates are broken down to maltose, in which 30% contribution is by salivary amylase, 70% contribution is by pancreatic amylase. Successfully all starch and glycogen, right, finally in your small intestine converted to maltose. Now this maltose comes in contact with the next juice present in the small intestine. I will write here only. What is that next juice? The next juice is intestinal juice. Intestinal juice is also called what? What is the another name? Succus entericus. Just try to recall succus entericus. One mark question. Define the secretion of Brunner gland and crypts of liver kern together called intestinal juice or succus entericus. Go through the list. Do it has any carbohydrate digesting enzyme? Yes. What is that? That is disaccharidases. Disaccharidases. Try to focus on the term. I will write here. The enzyme present in this is disaccharidases. The disaccharidases are three type. They are, one is maltase, another one is lactase, one more is what? Sucrase. Disaccharidases, I already told you, whenever there is a suffix ases, what you have to understand? It is an enzyme. Disaccharidases are those group of enzymes which act on disaccharides. Disaccharides ಮೇಲೆ act ಮಾಡುವ enzyme ಗಿನ ಆ ಗ್ರೂಪಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೇವೆ? Disaccharidases. Already the formed end product is what? Maltose. Maltose in your small intestine, in the presence of intestinal juice having a disaccharidase called what? Maltase. Maltose, OSC, in the presence of maltase, it is converted to what? It is broken down to glucose plus glucose. That means, dear students, it is very clear that when two molecules of glucose join, what is formed? Maltose. Maltose is an example for disaccharide. Suppose if you have consumed milk, the mammalian milk, not only human, even the cattle milk, the other mammalian milk, mammalಗಳ milk ಏನು ಇದೆ, the mammalian milk has a carbohydrate. What is that carbohydrate called? Lactose. ಸಪರೇಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿಯಾದರೂ ಬರ್ಕೊಂಡಿರಿ ಬೇಕಿದ್ರೆ. Lactose is a carbohydrate present in the mammalian milk, not only in the human, even in the cow milk also you will find this, and other mammals also. Okay, lactose in the presence of an enzyme called lactase. Okay, it is broken down to what? Glucose plus galactose. Glucose plus galactose. So that means, dear students, one molecule of glucose, one molecule of galactose, when these two join, right, these two join and they form a lactose. Lactose is a disaccharide. Okay, so that is the end product. Suppose if you have consumed jaggery, bella, ಅಥವಾ ಟೇಬಲ್ ಶುಗರ್, ನಾರ್ಮಲ್ ಶುಗರ್ ಏನು ಇದೆ ಕಿಚನಲ್ಲಿ, ಆರ್ ಶುಗರ್ ಕೇನನ್ನು ನೀವು ತಿಂದಿದ್ರೆ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವ ಕಾರ್ಬೋಹೈಡ್ರೇಟ್ ಯಾವುದು ಕೇಳಿದರೆ ಸುಕ್ರೋಸ್. ಸುಕ್ರೋಸ್, ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಗೆಸ್ ನೌ, ಇನ್ ದ ಪ್ರೆಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಎನ್ ಎನ್ಸೈಮ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ವಾಟ್? Sucrase. It is broken down to the end products. I will write here, one is glucose, another one is fructose. Okay, so when one molecule of glucose, one molecule of fructose, they join and form sucrose. Sucrose is an example for disaccharide. So can you give me example for disaccharide? Examples are maltose, lactose, sucrose. They are made up of joining of two monosaccharide. Dear students, can you give me example for monosaccharide? One I already told you, glucose. One more example is what? Galactose. One more is fructose. So when glucose join, they form maltose. Glucose galactose join, they form lactose. Glucose fructose join, they form sucrose. ಇನ್ನೊಮ್ಮೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ, carbohydrates can be classified into three type. Number one, monosaccharide, single sugar or the simple sugar. Example, glucose, galactose, fructose. Another kind of carbohydrate is disaccharide, formed by the joining of two monosaccharides. Example, maltose, lactose, sucrose. If three monosaccharides join, then it is called trisaccharide. If many monosaccharides join, they form polysaccharide. Example for polysaccharide is starch, glycogen. You might have heard about cellulose. ಇವೆಲ್ಲವೂ ಯಾವುದಕ್ಕೆ example? Okay, polysaccharide. So when you discuss the digestion of carbohydrate, okay, write down the notes, slow agi notes barkolta hogi. The digestion of carbohydrate begins in oral cavity. Next line, you have to write the explanation, then you have to write the reaction. What is the explanation? Idakke bariri. In oral cavity, starch and glycogen in the presence of salivary amylase of the saliva at a pH of 6.8 broken down to a disaccharide like maltose. Then write this reaction. Next, the only 30% of carbohydrate digestion seen in my oral cavity, because yake food remains in the oral cavity for a shorter duration. ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಹೊತ್ತು ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಿಲ್ಲ. Now the remaining food comes to stomach, but there is no carbohydrate digestion. Why? Because there are no carbohydrate digesting enzyme in the gastric juice. If you do not write this also, no issue in the exam, but ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬೇಕು ನಿಮಗೆ. Now the remaining carbohydrate come to small intestine. In small intestine, you need not to speak about bile juice. Bile juice ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಕು? ಲಿಪಿಡ್ ಡೈಜೆಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಸಾಕು. In small intestine, the pancreatic juice has pancreatic amylase, which convert all the carbohydrates into what? Disaccharide like maltose. Okay, this is how all carbohydrates are converted to maltose. Now, that maltose in the presence of intestinal juice called succus entericus having an enzyme called maltase broken down to glucose and glucose, two molecules of glucose. Next line. The mammalian milk is rich with a milk sugar. The name of the milk sugar in bracket you can write down. Example for milk sugar is lactose, okay, which is converted to, if you have consumed the milk, cow milk has lactose. Do lactose digestion occur in the oral cavity? No. Stomach? No. Excuse me. It occur only in the small intestine. In the presence of intestinal juice, lactase break down into what? Glucose plus galactose. Whereas sucrose, where we will find it? Sugar ಅಲ್ಲಿ normal table sugar ಅಥವಾ kitchen sugar, bella alwa, even in the sugar cane, in many other food, the sucrose in the presence of sucrase converted to glucose plus fructose. Okay, ನಿಮ್ಮದೇ ಲೈನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲನೇಷನ್ ಬರೆದು ಈ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಬರೆದ್ರೆ ಆಯಿತು. ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಲೈನ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ರೈಟ್ glucose, galactose, fructose are the end products of carbohydrate digestion. Dear students, what is the last line? Glucose, galactose, fructose are the end product of carbohydrate digestion, which are ready for the next step called absorption. When you eat polysaccharide like starch cannot be directly absorbed and given to my cell. The complex starch should be converted to a very simple form called monosaccharides like fructose, galactose, glucose. As they are monosaccharides, as they are very simple sugar, they can be what? Absorbed. So this is how carbohydrate digestion occur in my elementary canal. Mark it as a 5-mark question.